guys, Julia here from JM Squared Vintage. Welcome back to the channel. I am here today with something a little bit different. So today we are going to talk about the 10 forever trends, the 10 categories of things that I will never leave behind when I am outsourcing. No matter what is happening in trend at that moment, no matter what season it is, these are all reliable, tried and true, fast sellers that should, as long as the sourcing cost is right for your desired profit margin, should never be left behind. But before we get started today, if this is your first time here, if this is your first time stumbling on my channel, first and foremost, welcome. I am Julia. That is my name. We talk all things thrifting and vintage and the business of reselling on the internet here. If that sounds like something that you might be into, consider hitting subscribe down below. I would love to have you along on this journey. But with that being said, guys, we've got a lot of stuff to get through. So why don't you go grab yourself a snack, grab yourself a drink. You know I've got my matcha latte. So sit back, relax, and let's get into the categories. Hi guys, before we get into the things that I never leave behind at the thrift store, I want to take a quick minute to talk to you about Resellers Edge University. I talk a lot about the tools and the tech that I use in my day-to-day life as a reseller, but to be totally honest, the most important tool that you can have in your toolkit is knowledge, and that's where Resellers Edge comes in. You probably already know that reselling is a whole lot more than just sourcing items for cheap and selling them on the internet. It's about knowing what to grab, staying ahead of the trends, all the nitty-gritty of running a business, constantly refining your strategy, and that can be overwhelming to every single one of us, myself included. So Resellers Edge, if you are not familiar with it, is co-founded by Cayley and Nikki of Cayley, Elaine, and Sean and Bethany of Trash Pandas Thrift. If you don't know who they are, you should probably know who they are. I will link their YouTubes down below. You should go and follow them. These are absolute titans in our industry. They recognize that unlike a lot of industries out there, really every other industry out there, there's not really a central repository of institutional knowledge in the reselling world. It's relatively young and constantly evolving. So what started as a super comprehensive online course has grown into so much more. So the online course itself is designed to take you from where you are today to where you want to be. So whether you are a complete beginner and you want to take this to a dependable stream of part-time income, whether you are a side hustler and you want to take this full-time, whether you are full-time and you want to take this into a full-scale operation with employees and a standalone facility, this course can get you there. But beyond the online course, this is where it gets really special, and that is in the community and the daily live workshops and Zoom calls. Pretty much every single day, there's a live call or a workshop run by one of the coaches or a guest speaker that addresses anything and everything under the sun that you might encounter as a reseller. For example, just this week, there are calls on personal and professional development, 2025 trends to watch, a live Q&A with Nikki and Cayley, even an accountability call for anybody who might need a little bit of accountability support. They provide a venue to find an accountability buddy, which is amazing. Like just the other day, I hopped into a call led by Bethany where we were live workshopping people's listings to optimize them for the platforms and for search engines. Being a reseller, you can often feel like you're in a silo, so having that kind of community, that kind of like brain trust where you can bounce ideas around and refine them and have the direct input of people who are leaders in this industry is absolutely invaluable. And you can really feel it on these calls. I mean, literally just before I filmed this, I had a replay of one of the calls, and there are like hundreds of recorded workshops and calls. So if you missed it, no big deal. You can just watch it on the replay. And Cayley had said something and I had a question about it, and I went to go type it into the chat bar and completely forgot that I was watching a replay. But if I'm watching it live, I can actually put in that question and have that answered. Just having that kind of community and having that kind of access to institutional knowledge is something that can really take your business to the next level. There's also a thriving private Facebook community for that like on the fly feedback, and something I know you guys will love, a comprehensive and constantly updated BOLO list with pictures of the labels so you can easily spot them while you are outsourcing. So whether you are just starting out as a reseller or you are looking to build and scale your empire, Resellers Edge can help you get there. If you are interested in giving it a try, click the link below for 50% off of your first month with Resellers Edge University and start taking your business to the next level today. Now, back to the video. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about here are kimonos and shawls. So I think one of the most important things to talk about when we're talking about things like kimonos and shawls is the fact that they are, in general, one size fits all. Shawls are all one size fits all, and most kimonos are one size fits all. And even if it's just a one size fits all that's like a size small through a size extra large, off the top, you are multiplying your potential buyer pool by 4 or 5x at a minimum. Like when you're outsourcing, any opportunity you have to have a massive potential buyer pool for an item that you have is an opportunity that should not be missed. The other big thing when it comes to a kimono in particular is that you have this kind of opportunity to double dip with your keywords, because kimonos are not just topper pieces that you wear with like your regular street clothes, but you can also use them as like a swim cover up or kind of a poolside thing, resort wear. So again, anytime you have that like opportunity to put things into multiple categories, you have a big buyer pool, these are like the gold standard of things that you should be looking for when you are outsourcing. Now, in terms of what to look for, when we're talking about shawls, you want to look for high quality fabrics. Like if you can find a large like cashmere shawl, you're looking at probably $40, $50 minimum, no matter what the brand is. Obviously, make sure you're checking them for moth holes, damage, etc. But if you can find a shawl that's made out of something really nice, like that is a piece that you should not even think twice about paying up a little bit for, because you will get that money back, and chances are you will get that money back pretty dang quickly. Now, in terms of kimonos, obviously there's a lot of like cheaper kimonos out there. Cheaper kimonos still sell pretty quickly, between $15 and $20. So if you're able to source them for $1 or $2, that's great. But if you are in a venue where you're sourcing for $5, $6, $7, look for higher quality fabrics. Velvet, especially burnout velvet. Almost exclusively burnout velvet kimonos are some of my fastest selling items that, guaranteed in and out of my closet usually within a couple days. In terms of brands, it kind of doesn't matter. As long as you're sourcing inexpensively, like even no-name kimonos will sell as long as you're keywording them well. I have sold hundreds of kimonos that don't even have a brand on them. Again, they're selling for $18, $20, but I'm able to source at the bins. So don't run away from those, but you want to keep your eyes out, of course, for Johnny Was. That's one of my wish list items. I would love to find a Johnny Was burnout velvet kimono. Someday it will come to me. You also want to look for Love and Liberty, any of the Johnny Was sub-brands, and of course Sundance catalog. They have some beautiful kimonos, and these are things that are going to go from $30 at the extreme low end to $250 if you're able to get your hands on a Johnny Was burnout velvet kimono. So keep your eyes out for them. Remember to leverage that opportunity of keywording them in 2 different categories, and they'll be a slam dunk for your sourcing. So if you see them, pick them up. So the next category that we're going to talk about is classic prep. So the thing to remember about a classic prep look is timeless pieces. When you think about somebody who has like a classic preppy wardrobe, these are generally going to be extremely high quality pieces that have been acquired over time. They are styles that don't age, right? These are classic silhouettes, high quality fabrics, cottons and wools, quality textiles, quality tailoring. Think Madras, seersucker, Oxford shirts. I want to give an extra little nod to nautical stripes. I brought my own beloved St. James. These kind of tops, anything with like a nautical stripe, this is what they call Breton stripe. These are modeled after like French sailors' uniforms. This is the label you're looking for right here. You can usually find them because they have a little patch on the arm here. St. James is definitely a bolo. Like this is something that you would probably get $40, $50 for. But even like the J. Crew version of this, the Talbot's version of this, I have picked up so many of them and they've all sold so quickly. For Talbots or J. Crew, you're going to get $20 to $25. But if you're able to source that inexpensively, it's like a slam dunk pickup. These are things that are true staple pieces in a classic wardrobe, and they will just always sell. I don't care what is happening in trend. Stuff like this exists out of trend. I think I bought this in 2012, and it has been in active rotation in my wardrobe since then. If you're able to get them at the right price to fit in the profit margin that you want to hit, pick them up. They will always be fast sellers for you. Now, in terms of brands, you want to keep your eyes out for these classic prep pieces. Obviously, St. James, we just talked about it. You're looking at like Vineyard Vines, Lilly Pulitzer, Barber for those kind of classic, they call them the bead nail jackets. They look like barn jackets. LL Bean is in the mix here. These are all just very classic kind of legacy brands that make high quality pieces. They're not trendy, but they're never out of style. So the next category we're going to talk about is pre-1980s vintage. Now, if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know exactly how I feel about vintage things. Vintage is where I got my start. It is still my very favorite stuff to find when I'm outsourcing. I always feel a little honored to be, the custodian of a tiny little sliver of history and passing it on to its new home. But the thing about vintage is it tends to have definitely a much more niche audience, but that niche audience is a lot more engaged and a lot more inclined to purchase versus somebody shopping for like a Patagonia better sweater half zip. Now, I think part of the reason of why vintage does tend to sell better, like for me, for my business and how it kind of works for me, and I'd love to hear if you guys have the same experience. In general, vintage pieces will take a little bit longer to sell, but they are far more likely to sell at a higher price or at full asking price. And I think a big part of that is the fact that just by the nature of it being vintage, there is a scarcity component to it. There's just only so many of these articles that have made it through the years, right? You were talking pre-1980s, we're talking 40 years and older. So especially when you're dealing with something that's like made of a natural fiber, polyester by its very nature is like bomb-proof, right? It's plastic. It's not going to degrade the same way that a silk or a cotton will. And with that comes the whole aspect of if I see something that I like and it's the right size for me, like I'm not going to find another, right? So a lot of people won't risk putting in like a crazy lowball because if you don't accept that crazy lowball offer, they might not get that piece of clothing and they're probably not going to find another one out on the market, at least not immediately. There's a built-in like urgency to vintage pieces that just doesn't happen with 99% of the articles we find when we're sourcing, when we're selling contemporary clothes. Now, in this category, I'm also going to add in vintage style clothing because again, you're going to have a lot of the same buyers, right? A smaller but more dedicated buyer pool for these kind of items. But in terms of newly manufactured clothing that are done in vintage and retro styles, there's just a limited pool of companies that make that kind of clothing. A lot of the people that are the market for these kind of clothing, like this is a lifestyle, right? You think about that cool rockabilly chick that you know from work, and like that's the kind of stuff that she wears to work. That's part of her lifestyle outside of work. There's a high demand for it and few manufacturers that make it. So I'm talking like your ModCloth, your Unique Vintage, your Collective, your Hell Bunny. All of these are brands that if you are seeing them and the price is right, you should be picking them up. They're almost guaranteed fast sellers. And even if you find something, like the amount of kind of no-name Amazon brands that I found in that kind of retro style, like they still sell really well. Now, I wouldn't go paying $15 for something like that if it's not like a recognizable brand. Collective, you find a Collective piece and it's $15, like all day you should pick that up because you will probably get $35 or up. But an Amazon piece that doesn't even have a tag in it, but it is that retro style, like that's still going to sell for probably about $20 and probably pretty quickly. So pre-1980s vintage and pre-1980s vintage style clothing is an always pickup for me, no matter what. Again, exists outside of current micro trends. Just a dedicated pool of buyers. And especially when you find those true vintage pieces, there is that built-in urgency that should get you that better price. Next up, and this is kind of a weird one of the things that I will pick up anytime I see them are leather gloves. In particular, women's leather gloves, with the exception of men's driving gloves. I keep my eyes out for those. The thing about leather gloves, and this is kind of a left field, very specific thing, every single pair of leather gloves I've ever had has sold super, super quickly. And this generally has the benefit of being like, if you're out thrifting, typically you can get gloves really, really inexpensively. This isn't necessarily the kind of thing that I've ever seen thrift stores really jacking up the price on. The thing is, if you're getting a decent pair of leather gloves retail, the prices start at about $50. So buying them on the secondhand market, even if they're more modern leather gloves, you can pretty reliably expect to get between like $20 and $30. Now, if you can find like colored leather gloves, red gloves, pink gloves, blue gloves, all the better. I've never gotten under $30 for a pair of colored leather gloves. They're just a little bit harder to get your hands on. You always want to be checking out the accessories in the thrift store because there's like a lot of great finds to be had there. And again, for the most part, in terms of accessories, maybe not so much purses, but like accessories like gloves, sunglasses, etc., you're not going to find a lot of jacked up prices on those items, and there's great money to be had. But gloves in particular, in terms of accessories, have been like historically, per my business, the fastest seller of all accessories. So don't leave them behind. I mean, it's something that probably a lot of people don't even think about when they're outsourcing. I've sold a bunch of pairs in the middle of summer, like they just kind of sell all year. They're just a very easy sell. And again, you can usually get them pretty inexpensively when you do find them. So don't sleep on gloves, guys. All right, next up, we are going to talk about Lagenlook. Now, when I think about a Lagenlook piece, and if you're unfamiliar with Lagenlook, it's literally the German translation of layered look. When I think about it, I think the thing that always comes to my mind is that Lagenlook is not necessarily like a style, it's a lifestyle. I'm going to put a blanket statement that any kind of clothing that is associated with a lifestyle versus like a trend is something that should also be on this list. There's obviously a million different ways of life that I'm not privy to, so if you are aware of something where people, wear these kind of things as part of their lifestyle, that should be on your list of things to pick up when you see them. But Lagenlook pieces are timeless. They have looked the same forever. They're usually of high quality fabrics, cotton, silk, linen, of course. Linen's like the big one. And even the no-name stuff is going to go for a decent price. Again, like the Amazon vintage pieces that I have found no-name cotton Amazon pieces that are in a Lagenlook style, and they have sold, again, in that $20 to $30 range. But one of the things to think about with Lagenlook that makes it even more desirable is that a lot of the pieces in the Lagenlook world are free size. So just like shawls and kimonos, like if you find a free size Lagenlook piece, it's going to fit a wider pool of potential buyers. So that is, again, a great leg up on something that is already going to be a great seller. A Lagenlook piece does also have that kind of double dip where you have the people that are into this kind of like minimalist Lagenlook lifestyle. A lot of these pieces also tend to be the kind of foundation pieces for people who like to dress in more like art to wear type pieces, right? You will have a very simple tunic, but then you'll have, this incredible artist created scarf or a big chunky necklace. So you can use those kind of like artsy, art to wear keywords to get them in front of those buyers as well. But just in general, this is like an always pick up for me. I'm always lasered in on finding linen pieces. And again, there's like no trends in this, right? The Lagenlook lifestyle has really been around since probably like the late 60s, and it has just never stopped. And the pieces have not really changed that much in terms of what they look like. But while you're outsourcing, again, as if you're able to get them at bins prices, $1, $2, $3, pick up those no-name linen pieces that you find. You will get pretty reliably between $20 and $30 for them, sometimes up to about $35. But there are definitely some great bolo brands in that world that you should be keeping your eyes out for. I think a lot of people know Magnolia Pearl. That's a great brand. Let me know if you have ever found a Magnolia Pearl piece in the thrift or in the bins. I've only found it once. It was very exciting. It was a t-shirt. It sold for $100 in a day. For a t-shirt. It wasn't even one of the linen pieces. It wasn't even really one of the more artistic pieces. It was like a screen printed t-shirt. Mieko Mints, Bluefish, there are lots of great bolo brands. I could do an entire video on just like the brands to look for Lagenlook pieces, because chances are you don't know them if this is not your world, but some of them go. I mean, if you find a Mieko Mints piece, you're looking at $200, $250. Like, they are no joke expensive. So it is an aesthetic you should absolutely invest some time in learning, especially if you are new in reselling. This is something that you might pass over because you don't know the brand, but there is a lot of money in that world. A Lagenlook piece should never be left behind when you find it. Next up, I'm going to talk about winter sports gear. I'm going to say this with the instruction that you should take what I'm about to say and apply it if there is something that you are into in your life that has specialized gear. For me, I snowboard, so winter sports is something that I have a pretty deep well of knowledge in. You might do horseback riding, or you might be really into pickleball or tennis or whatever. So in whatever it is that you are interested in, there's probably gear that is more expensive that you are aware of. So you should be keeping your eyes out for the same thing. In fact, if there are things that you are into, put it down in the comments. Like, say you're into horseback riding. What are the good brands we should be looking for? Say you're into pickleball. What are the good brands we should be looking for? Again, for me, I just know winter sports, so that's what I'm talking about here. But also, you should be keyed in on winter sports. I think the reason that winter sports gear in particular is so good is because in general, it's like a high dollar cost, even for like entry level gear, and low usage. For most people, like I lived in a ski town, so I use my ski gear all the time. But for most people, like you have a ski jacket, and ski jackets, like decent ski jackets, start at about $300. Start at about $300. And a lot of them only get used 3 or 4 times a year, so it is something that people really like being able to save a lot of money on. The thing about winter sports in particular, and I say this because there's states, I used to live in Utah, right? So there's a lot of people that I know that lived in Utah that never skied, which is crazy to me, but I understand. It is a very expensive hobby. But if you live in a place like Utah, or you live in a place like Colorado or Montana or Idaho, anywhere that has a big footprint of winter sports, I urge you to take a little time to learn what ski brands are good and what ski brands are not. Like, for example, you might walk in and say, hey, this is a nice ski jacket, but if it's from like Zero Exposure, which is like a TJ Maxx brand, because they do make basically dupes of Obermeyer, which is a decent brand to keep your eyes out for, they're not as good and they're not going to resell nearly as much as like the Obermeyer piece will net. So I urge you to take a little time to learn like what to look for in terms of like modern cuts. You can just go on backcountry.com, or you can pop over to your local ski shop and see what the ski jackets look like today. But yeah, so I urge you to take a little bit of time to learn like what brands are good. For example, for snowboarding, you have Burton. Burton's probably the biggest brand in snowboarding and has been forever. But in particular, there is a line of Burton that it's called Burton AK, and that's their basically highly technical line. So most of those pieces are Gore-Tex. They're expensive. I think the cheapest pair of AK snowboard pants you can get right now is like $450. Without batting an eye, if you find a pair of AK pants that are in decent condition, that's a $150 bill and probably will be sold in like 2 or 3 days. I have sold many ski and snowboard pants and jackets. It's honestly how I got my start in clothing resale. I was just clearing out my own old ski jackets and ski pants. So again, especially if you are in one of those areas that has a lot of winter sports, take some time, learn the brands, go to your local ski shop, see what they're carrying. And that should give you a good blueprint of the brands you're looking for, the silhouettes that you're looking for, the kind of fabrics that you're looking for. And if you are going to do that, I urge you to pick up some Nick Wax Tech Wash, like the wash-in waterproofing. If you pick up a Burton snowboard jacket at the bins or whatever, and you wash that in a regular detergent, it's actually going to ruin the waterproofing on the coat. So you're going to get a lot of money for those kind of pieces, especially if you're picking them at the bins. So just spend the whatever it is, $15 on the Nick Wax Tech Wash so you can kind of preserve that and make sure that you're selling a good product. I always have these things linked in the description of my videos, so it's well worth the money if you are selling anything that has a technical fabric, a Gore-Tex, etc. Also, if that is part of your life, if you live in the Pacific Northwest and you have raincoats, stuff like that, spend the money on the Tech Wash. It will save your garments and make them last much, much longer. Anyway, winter sports gear, always a pickup. So next up, this is kind of a bigger category and it has a lot of different applications, but there's one common theme, and that is embellishment. Typically when I'm going through the bins, and I wish they allowed you to film in my bins. They don't allow you to film in any of the bins that I go to around here. But when I'm going through, I'm generally looking for like texture, embellishment. I'm talking beads, fringe, embroidery especially. These are things that like in manufacturing, they are expensive to do. So generally when you see something that is heavily embellished, it's going to be a more expensive item retail. A lot of things that are heavily embellished also usually fall into that like high cost, low use category. For example, I just sold this piece from Devon Windsor, which is like this incredible fringe swim cover-up skirt. Like, this is not the kind of thing that's going to be in regular rotation in your wardrobe. It is a statement skirt. It'll probably be worn twice and then sold on. This thing was $300 new. People want to have that impact, but they don't want to be spending $300. So I think I got $108 for this. Hopefully she wears it twice and can move it on and sell it for exactly what she paid for it, right? But this is the exact kind of thing that I'm constantly looking for while I'm at the bins. These are special pieces. Heavily embroidered pieces are special. Like, even if you find like a shirt that has no name but is heavily embroidered, like, I've picked up hundreds of those and I will sell hundreds more of those. People love embroidery, they love beads, they love fringe, they love embellishment, they also love getting a deal on it. These kind of things do sell very reliably for me. They're special, right? They're one of a kind. These are the kind of things, like the 1 or 2 wear items that people like to get on the secondhand market. They don't like to pay full price for stuff like that. But keep your eyes out for those heavily embellished pieces. They're always great pickups. Next up, we are getting there. We are going to talk about Aran Island sweaters, Irish sweaters, Scottish sweaters, British sweaters. These are, if taken care of, heirloom pieces. And they are always, always, always going to be in style. So the best wool in the world comes from this area. And Aran Island sweaters are probably the most famous. The Aran Islands, if you're unfamiliar, are Irish islands, and they're settled by fishermen. These are technically fishermen sweaters. And these are the people that need these heavy duty wool sweaters. These are so warm. And it's why we tend to find them kind of frequently in the thrift. These kind of sweaters are a really popular souvenir to get while you're in Scotland or Ireland or in Great Britain. They're a really popular souvenir. And the fact of the matter is a lot of people bring them home and never find themselves needing that level of warmth. I have found a couple out here in California, and I think about somebody who's like, yeah, I'm going to bring home this heavy duty wool sweater to Los Angeles, where it rarely goes below 60 degrees. You will boil in one of those sweaters at 60 degrees. They are heavy, heavy duty. So keep your eyes out for them. For the most part, any Irish sweater, especially if you can find a cream one with the classic fisherman cable knit, you're looking at $50 minimum. They're pretty expensive to buy. If you go to the Aran Islands, you're going to be paying generally about $200 to $300 for these sweaters. They're expensive, but they are bulky. They're the kind of things that you bring them home, and if you don't reach for them in the next couple years, you're going to end up donating them because they are this big on your shelf, right? They're bulky sweaters. So you can find them pretty frequently in the thrift, and if you have that online reselling platform, as most of us do, you can easily get them up to the people in Chicago, in New England, in Minnesota who really deal with that level of cold and love these sweaters, but don't want to pay $300 for them. They are always quick sales. I don't care when you find them. I have sold them in the summer. I have sold them in the spring. I have sold them in the fall. I've of course sold them in the winter. If you find them, pick them up. I know that they're bulky. If you're anything like me, I've got a very limited storage situation, so it's always nerve-wracking when you pick up these big bulky sweaters, but these things are in and out of your closet so quickly. And in general, the sizing, the bigger the better. You're still going to move a small pretty quickly, but you're going to move that large a lot faster because a lot of people, even, size small girls, they want that kind of oversized, cozy sweater. So the bigger the better. But again, you're looking at $40, $50 minimum on any of these. They are an absolute forever pickup when you see them at the thrift, at a yard sale, at the bins, wherever you end up doing your sourcing. Pick them up. And the final category we're going to talk about right now is workwear. The thing about workwear is that no matter what's going on with trend, there is always a level of inelastic demand with workwear pieces. And if you're unfamiliar with what inelastic demand means, it means that no matter what is going on in the world, there is just always going to be a demand for it. Think like insulin. Insulin's the best example of something that has an inelastic demand. It doesn't matter where the economy is, people need insulin. So that has inelastic demand. That will not grow or shrink with inflation. Workwear is in the same camp for the most part. You're always going to have people that are doing physical labor, construction, electricians, carpenters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They need these pieces, right? Workwear is always going to have that baseline demand. And on top of that, it comes and goes in trend. Right now, there are people that like to wear Carhartt pieces as a trend. They've never picked up a hammer in their life, but they're wearing a Carhartt jacket. And great. They're great jackets. There's a reason that Carhartt jackets are the gold standard because they are warm, they are durable, they are well made. If you're not doing physical labor in a Carhartt jacket and you take care of it, that jacket will outlive your children's children, right? They are made well. So you have that inelastic demand of the people that are doing physical labor, and then you have peaks and valleys of trend on top of that. You also have a component of people that collect American workwear. That's a big thing. So if you're finding vintage Carhartt, vintage Levi's, et cetera, that also has a market. So workwear is something that I urge every single reseller to do a little research, learn the brands that are good, learn the models that are good, learn the things that people are looking for. Let me put it this way. About a year ago, I found a Carhartt jacket that had holes in it, stains. I got it at the bins. I got it for $1. So it was kind of a low risk thing, but I'm I wonder if this thing will sell. This jacket was damaged. It was not in great shape. and it sold for like $45. And it sold in about a week. So like that is the kind of demand that sits on these pieces. You know, like workwear is expensive and necessary for a lot of people in this world. In terms of brands to keep your eyes out for, of course, Carhartt. There's a reason. Everybody knows Carhartt. Their stuff is great. You know, Red Wing boots, Red Wing shoes, if you find them. These things start at about $350 retail. If you can find a pair in decent condition, like you're looking at even, you know, with some serious wear on them, because Red Wings are like made to last. They're very, very good quality. You're looking at a minimum of $50, $60. And I mean, some of them, if you can find a vintage pair, I mean, I've seen some go up into the $500, $600 range. Like Red Wing is a brand to be on the lookout for sure. Obviously, you need the storage space to be able to hold on to boots, but Red Wing, 511 tactical. You'll see a lot of like first responders wearing 511 tactical pieces. The Duluth fire hose pants, another great thing to keep your eyes out for. You're looking at like a minimum of $30 on those. So do a little research, because again, this is something that anybody can find in any part of the country, and there is money to be made there, but you do need to know which pieces will fetch the good price and which pieces will not. So do a little searching, do a little comping, even before you go to the thrift store. Quality workwear pieces are like a slam dunk pickup whenever you see them. It doesn't matter what's going on in trend or in the economy. But that is it, guys. That is my top 10 categories of things that I will always pick up anytime I see them at the thrift. I don't care the season. I don't care the economy. These are tried and true fast sellers for me. I hope they are for you as well. If you have forever pickups on your list, put them down in the comments down below. Let us know what things for you are consistent fast sellers. I'm always interested to hear what other people's experiences are with this kind of stuff. But guys, I hope this was helpful. If you had fun, please consider leaving a like or a comment on this video. Of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. I would love to have you along on this journey. If you have any other content like this that you want me to do, don't ever hesitate to put it in the comments. I'm always keeping my eyes out for your suggestions. But without further ado, guys, I hope you have the most beautiful week. Happy hunting. Hope you find some of these things while you are outsourcing this week. And I will see you all in the next one.